Let's talk a little bit about argument essays. I want to review some of the most important things to keep in mind as you're writing an argument essay. So an argument essay is all about what they say versus what I say. Think about when you have an argument with, a friend or a family member. You have one point of view, they disagree, they have another point of view, and both of you are trying to convince each other that your point of view is the right side. And that's essentially what you're doing in an argument essay. You can explain what the other side thinks. This is called a counter argument, and you're going to learn a lot more about this later on. But mostly you're choosing one side and arguing that side. The only reason you would bring up what the other side thinks is in order to argue against it. It's called a counter argument and rebuttal, or a counter argument and a refutation. To recognize when you're being asked to write an argument topic, you should look for the following language. Questions with should. Should the government raise minimum wage to $10 an hour? You also might see agree or disagree, and then a sentence. Agree or disagree. The government should raise the minimum wage to $10 an hour. So both of these would be examples if you have an essay exam or a teacher gives you a topic to write about, that you should write in an argument essay style to answer these types of questions. When you write your thesis statement for an argument essay, the most important thing that you need to do is take a side. So you still have a topic and a controlling idea here. The topic is just whatever general subject you're writing about, and then your controlling idea is the side that you're taking. Are you for or are you against? Are you on the pro side or the con side? Do you agree or disagree? Don't sit on the fence, so to speak. In other words, don't sit in the middle and say, well, this side has some good points and the other side has some good points. No, you need to choose a side for this particular style. Don't weaken your argument with opinion statements. Opinion language is for counter-argument. It's not for your thesis statement. So don't say things like, I believe, I agree, in my opinion. Just simply state your position. And then argue, don't describe. Don't describe the problem, don't describe the issue. Just simply state what side of the argument you are on. So we'll take a look at some of these thesis statements, and I'll ask you to think about whether or not you think this is a good thesis statement, and then I'll tell you if it is or isn't. In my opinion, the government should not raise the minimum wage for 3 reasons. What do you think? Good thesis statement? No. In this case, it's got that language that weakens the argument, in my opinion. So that softens the argument and makes this not a good thesis statement. Raising the minimum wage has 3 good benefits. What do you think? A good thesis statement? Yes. Even though it's very simple, this is a good thesis statement. It clearly takes a position on the issue. It doesn't weaken the argument. There are some positive and negative aspects to raising the minimum wage. What do you think? Is it a good thesis statement? No, it is not, because it does not clearly take a position. It talks about positive and negative, but it doesn't make it clear whether it's arguing for positive or negative aspects. Although some people argue that raising the minimum wage will hurt people, it will actually help the economy for 3 reasons. Is this a good thesis statement? This might have been confusing for you because it does mention 2 positions. However, using although, that contrast language, makes it really clear which position this student is taking. Clearly, the student is taking the position that it will help the economy. So while it does mention a counter argument, it clearly states, using contrast language, which argument this student is in favor of. Although some businesses don't want to pay their workers more, the government should raise the minimum wage to help those workers. Is this a good thesis statement? No, this thesis statement has too much description. It's too complex and it's not clear where the argument actually is. let's talk a little bit about support in an argument essay. In an argument essay, you can use quotes, statistics, and facts. If you do this, you should cite your sources. You can put the website information in parentheses after the information, or you can use a citation style. We're actually going to be learning about citation styles a little bit. Explain how the quote, statistic, or fact supports your point. Don't just drop it into your paper and expect the reader to understand what it means. Give it context. Explain how it fits with the argument that you're making. Don't use too many quotes in the paper. You can also use logical consequences, where you talk about the short or long-term consequences of an action. What will happen if? So you'll discuss, if you raise the minimum wage, this will lead to this, which will lead to this, which will lead to this. You can also use some personal examples to support your argument. Some things that you should not do in an argument essay. You should not overgeneralize. Don't assume that everything is true because you've seen it a couple of times. You should also not use stereotypes, where you assume that something is true of a whole group of people because it's true of one or two people, which is kind of similar to overgeneralizing. Do not use religious arguments. Do not be overly emotional. A little emotion is okay and it can be very effective, but too much emotion, being dramatic, is a little bit too much for an argument essay. And don't exaggerate. Don't take a small claim that's true and make it bigger than it actually is. So let's look at some support, and I want you to decide what's wrong with this support. The people who earn minimum wage have no education. If you said this is a stereotype, you are correct. In fact, there are a lot of people who earn minimum wage who do have an education. God will provide for our needs, so the government doesn't need to do so. If you said this was a religious argument, you are correct. If businesses have to pay the workers more money, they will just close and the entire economy will collapse. If you said this was an exaggeration, you are correct. That's it for argument essays. If you do have any questions, you can post to the discussion board.